Ukraine brought the war far from the front line into the heart of Russia again Sunday in drone penetrations that Russian authorities said damaged two office buildings a few kilometers from the Kremlin and a pig breeding complex on the country's border. The attacks, which Ukraine didn't acknowledge in keeping with its security policy, reflected a pattern of more frequent and deeper cross-border strikes the Kyiv government has launched since starting a counteroffensive against Russian forces in June. A precursor and the most dramatic of the strikes happened in May on the Kremlin itself, the seat of power in the capital, Moscow. Sunday's was the fourth such strike on the capital region this month and the third this week, showing Moscow's vulnerability as Russia's war in Ukraine drags into its 18th month. The Russian Defense Ministry said 3 drones targeted the city in an attempted terrorist attack by the Kyiv regime. Air defenses shot down 1 drone in Odintsovo in the surrounding Moscow region, while 2 others were jammed and crashed into the Moscow city business district. Photos and video showed that a drone had ripped off part of the facade of a modern skyscraper. IQ Quarter, located 7.2 kilometers (4.5 miles) from the Kremlin. When the drone hit, sparks, flames and smoke spewed from the building, with debris falling on the sidewalk and street. Windows were blown out, and metal window frames were mangled. A security guard was injured, Russia's state news agency TASS reported, citing emergency officials. Russia's RIA Novosti news agency reported the building's tenants included several government agencies. Flights were temporarily suspended at Moscow's Vnukovo airport, and the airspace over Moscow and the outlying regions was temporarily closed. President Vladimir Putin, who was in his hometown of St. Petersburg at the time of the attempted attacks for meetings with African leaders and a naval celebration, was briefed, his spokesman said. Ukrainian officials didn't acknowledge the attacks, but President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly video address, gradually. The war is returning to the territory of Russia, to its symbolic centers and military bases, and this is an inevitable, natural, and absolutely fair process. A Ukrainian Air Force spokesman also didn't claim responsibility but said the Russian people were seeing the consequences of Russia's war in Ukraine. There's already a certain mood in Russia, that something is flying in, and loudly, he said. There's no discussion of peace or calm in the Russian interior anymore. They got what they wanted. Inat also referenced an early Sunday drone attack on Crimea, Ukrainian territory which Russia occupied and illegally annexed in 2014. The Russian Defense Ministry announced it had shot down 16 Ukrainian drones and neutralized 8 others through electronic jamming. No casualties were reported. Zelensky has vowed to take back all land Russian forces have occupied, including Crimea, and his efforts have been strengthened by the receipt and deployment of increasingly advanced Western weapons. In the earlier attacks on Moscow, Russia's Defense Ministry reported shooting down a Ukrainian drone outside the city on Friday. 4 days earlier, 2 drones struck the Russian capital. One of them falling in the center of the city near the Defense Ministry's headquarters along the Moscow River about 3 kilometers (2 miles) from the Kremlin. The other drone hit an office building in southern Moscow, gutting several upper floors. In another attack on July 4, the Russian military said air defenses downed 4 drones on Moscow's outskirts and jammed a 5th that was forced down. Russia has also blamed Ukrainian forces for attacking border areas, and on Sunday, the governor of one such region, Bryansk, said a Ukrainian strike damaged a pig breeding complex and injured 3 people. In Ukraine, the Air Force reported Sunday it had destroyed 4 Russian drones above the Kherson and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Information on the attacks could not be independently verified. Meanwhile, a Russian missile strike late Saturday killed 2 people and wounded 20 in the city of Sumy in northeast Ukraine. A 4-story vocational college building was hit, the Ukrainian Interior Ministry said. Local authorities said that dormitories and teaching buildings were damaged in the blast and a fire that followed.